Broadcasting live from RISKWORLD 2022 at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, it's time for Workplace MVP, brought to you by R3 Continuum, a global leader in helping workplaces thrive during disruptive times. Now, here's your host.
Hi, everyone. Jamie Gassmann here with Workplace MVP, and we are broadcasting from RISKWORLD 2022 Expo Hall in R3 Continuum's booth. And joining me is Camille Graham.
Hello.
From Floodproofing. Talk to me about your company and tell me a little bit about your background.
Yes, thanks for having me, Jamie. We are floodproofing.com. We are all the way from New Jersey. It's our first time out here in San Francisco for me personally ever. And it's our first time that our company's doing this conference. We do all things flood mitigation. So we provide flood panels, flood vents, and even flood glass, deployable systems and passive systems to prevent floodwater from entering into a building. We also have flood vents that let water through to alleviate the pressure on a building. And we have an insurance agency, Risk Reduction Plus Group, that helps to pass on the insurance savings that you should see from having proper flood mitigation through to your insurance premium. We are a one-stop shop for all things flood mitigation.
Very interesting. And so you mentioned this is your first time expoing at RIM.
It is.
So talk to me about, what were some of the things that made you decide that this was where you needed to be for, sharing your business and what you guys do?
So we actually, one of our partners that we work really closely with, Tiger Dam, is also here. And they told us that this is the most beneficial conference that they come to every year because they meet people that have an immediate need for what we do. They have an immediate problem that they need to solve with flooding, and they're looking for solutions. And so it's cool. We usually go to conferences where we work with a lot of architects and engineers, which is incredible because we get specced early on in the design phase. But there's also a huge need for property managers, risk managers, people that have buildings now that need solutions, and we're here to provide them.
Yeah, and so we're at the end of day one. And so talk to me, how have your conversations been going so far with the traffic that's been coming through?
It's been awesome. We have had some of the most incredible conversations with people that have experienced flooding or they know that they're in a flood zone. And with the changing climate and with the increased risk that's posed by flooding all over the country, people know that this is an issue that they need to solve. They're looking for solutions, and it's top of mind more today than ever before. So people are coming eager to find a solution to that problem, and it's just been the most progressive conversations that we've had at a conference.
That's fantastic. And so looking at flooding, just out of pure curiosity, are there areas within the North America, obviously America,
Yeah.
I think you're kind of more in the U.S. For your services. Are there some areas that are more prone to flooding that don't have this protection in place than others? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I will say that a lot of people, when they think about flooding, they assume coastal. They think oceans, they think beach towns, they think Florida. But actually, all over the country, this risk is present. A lot of flooding that happens is flash flooding from rainstorms. So yes, do we do a ton of work in coastal communities like Florida, like New Jersey, like New York City and Hoboken? We do. But we also do a ton of work in places that probably would not be top of mind when you think about flooding, because this issue is all over the country these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned flash flooding, but what are some other natural or even maybe man-made situations that are causing flooding within the country that businesses should be aware of?
Yeah, so we have sometimes in your drainage system, so you might have, an area where that sees a lot of rainfall and then the system is completely overwhelmed and it can't handle the amount of rain that you saw. So it can kind of backflow and cause flooding all through the street, which causes a horrible issue that might not have been expected. During Hurricane Ida in the Northeast, this storm was hitting Louisiana. And we knew that it was going to cause a huge issue down there. And then the next thing we knew, up north in Philadelphia and in New York City, there was, life loss because of flash flooding and flooding that happened that we did not expect. We didn't expect it to come. It was actually considered to be like a 500-year flood event. Vine Street through Philadelphia was completely flooded to a point that nobody had ever seen before, nobody would ever expect. And one thing that I want to say is that when a storm like that happens, it might be considered a 100 or 500-year flood event, but that doesn't mean that if it happened yesterday, it can't happen again tomorrow. These things can happen more than once within that 500-year frame, and they probably will as time goes on and we start to see these things happening more frequently.
Yeah. And so if there's a business out there that, let's just say they're not in a prominent flood area, maybe they're not in a floodplain, it's not anything that's really on their radar from a location perspective, what is some advice that you would give to them in terms of how they should be looking at this as part of kind of their overall risk mitigation?
Yeah, I always say don't just think about today and don't just look at necessarily the history of flooding in an area, but think about the future and really just consider the resiliency of your business or your building where you're at. Whether it be flood insurance or a flood mitigation system in place, if there is an event, having something in place is just going to allow you to open your doors, sooner than if obviously you had a flood event. So it's something that we say, always consider, never think that you're not vulnerable to something like this, and protect yourself not just for today, but for the future.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much for joining us. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to get more information or to learn a little bit more, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, they can go to floodproofing.com. Our website is an awesome resource. You can find everything that we have to offer, and you can reach out to us on that website.
Yeah, very interesting information. Thank you again. It's been great to chat with you.
Thank you for joining us on Workplace MVP. R3 Continuum is a proud sponsor of this show and is delighted to celebrate most valuable professionals who work diligently to secure safe workplaces where employees can thrive.